Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be examining a case that is just extraordinarily difficult. The source material is rigorous, it's very fact-based, and it covers the 2018 murder of 6-year-old Alesha MacPhail.
It's a crime that truly sent shockwaves across the United Kingdom.
It really did. And our mission here is to honor the gravity of this by sticking just to the evidence. We'll be looking at the details of the criminal investigation, the forensic science, and the legal process itself.
Which means unpacking the events in Rothesay on the Isle of Bute with extreme care.
Exactly, with the utmost care and respect for Alesha. We're here to be informed by the facts that were established in the sources.
And you really can't start this discussion without understanding the setting. The Isle of Bute, the public reaction was so immense, partly because this was seen as an incredibly safe place.
A quiet island community.
Yes, known for tranquility. People felt insulated from this kind of crime, and that illusion of safety was just shattered. So today we're focusing on the established facts about Alesha MacPhail, the victim, and the perpetrator, Aaron Campbell.
Who was 16 years old at the time.
Just 16.
Okay, let's unpack this, beginning with Alesha herself and, the background of her visit to Rothesay.
Alesha Sarah MacPhail was born on October 22nd, 2011. She lived in Airdrie in North Lanarkshire with her mother and her younger sister. And the sources really paint this picture of a happy, settled little girl.
Her head teacher described her as a smiley and happy young girl. She loved school, had just finished primary too.
And she particularly loved literacy, which is just a wonderful detail.
It is. And outside of school, she loved things like gymnastics, and I thought this was so sweet, cake baking.
She was on what should have been a wonderful summer holiday, a 3-week visit. But she was only 3 days into that visit with her father, Robert MacPhail, and her paternal grandparents.
And they lived in that seafront home in Rothesay.
Exactly. The main town on the island.
That location, it becomes so vital to understanding how the crime was even possible. The sources repeatedly mention this reputation for security.
They do.
And that leaving the key in the front door was just common practice.
It was normal. It shows this level of trust, of community that unfortunately created the opening for what happened.
That sense of safety was eventually weaponized against them.
It was. The crime didn't just cause grief. It was a sense of profound betrayal for the community. The one thing they thought they could count on their safety was just gone overnight.
We have to turn now to the perpetrator, Aaron Thomas Campbell. The sources give a lot of detail on his background, and it needs very careful examination.
He was just shy of 17 when he committed the murder. He had moved to Butte when he was around 4 or 5.
So he grew up there.
He did, and his early life, according to the records, was very difficult. There are mentions of physical and emotional abuse and very intense arguments with his mother, who struggled with alcoholism.
He had also been tested for ADHD and had a history of self-harm and depression.
A very turbulent background. Outwardly, though, he seemed to blend in. He went to the local academy, had friends, went to parties. But underneath that facade, the sources show something much, much darker was developing.
They really do. This wasn't something that just came out of nowhere.
Not at all. There was a pattern of violent ideation. For instance, when he was just 15, he started thinking about, and his words were, doing something excessive. He specifically mentioned rape.
So this was active planning, not just a passing thought.
It seems so. And even more chilling, there's a Facebook message from 2017. In it, he wrote, "I might kill one day for the lifetime experience."
For the lifetime experience.
It's horrifying. It suggests this calculated curiosity, like murder was some kind of item to be checked off a list, not a crime of passion.
Which points to premeditation. A developing obsession. And we also know he had actual behavioral issues that needed intervention, right?
That's right. He had been in a rehabilitation program because he had been starting fires. So when you put it all together, the self-harm, the depression, the fire starting, and then these explicit messages about killing, you see a clear and very tragic trajectory of escalating destructive behavior.
A trajectory that wasn't stopped in time.
It wasn't.
And before we get into the night itself, we need to establish that link between Campbell and the MacPhail household. It explains why he was even there.
The connection was transactional. It was through drug dealing. Campbell knew Alesha's father, Robert MacPhail, and his girlfriend, Toni McLaughlin.
Because he bought cannabis from them.
On multiple occasions, yes. Now, the sources do confirm those interactions had stopped in early 2018 after a disagreement, but the key point is he was very familiar with their home, their routine, and critically, the fact that the front door was often left unlocked.
Let's move now to the timeline. July 1st into July 2nd, 2018. This is crucial for understanding how this unfolded minute by minute.
On that evening, July 1st, Alesha was settled into bed in her room. It was on the ground floor, the one closest to the front door.
Watching a Peppa Pig DVD.
Yes. Her father's girlfriend, Toni McLaughlin, checked on her around 11 p.m. She was fast asleep. At the same time, Aaron Campbell was hosting a party at his house.
Right, with about 15 friends. He'd been drinking heavily.
And after the party wound down, his night took a much darker turn. A friend actually came back to his house around 12:30 a.m.
And what did they find?
According to what was later said at trial, the friend found Campbell in bed and described him as being suicidal.
They were worried enough that they offered to stay with him.
They were genuinely concerned. But Campbell said no. He blamed his state on an argument with his mother. He then told the friend he was going to get stoned. And that's the point where his drug-seeking behavior becomes the catalyst for everything that follows.
So after that, he started messaging people, trying to buy cannabis.
Yes, including Robert MacPhail. He also called Toni McLaughlin at 1:47 a.m. and 1:48 a.m., but she doesn't answer.
So his stated intent, his reason for leaving the house was to get drugs.
That was the initial intent, yes. His destination was the MacPhail property, which was only a 5-minute walk from his own home. He left at 1:04 a.m.
And the sources confirm he was armed.
He was. He took a kitchen knife from his home, so he wasn't just going to buy cannabis. He was prepared for something else, confrontation or violence.
And this is the moment where everything shifts. He enters the unlocked home.
He knew the layout. He went straight in. The door to the front room where Alesha was sleeping was slightly ajar, and in that moment, as he later described it himself, that dark impulse he'd been harboring for years just took over.
The records show his own words.
Yes. His chilling, self-reported realization was, all I thought about was killing her once I saw her. The plan to steal cannabis was just gone, instantly replaced by the intent to murder.
He lifted her from the bed. She was likely drowsy, confused, and he left the house without anyone upstairs hearing a thing.
He carried her. He walked along the ocean shore toward the south end of Rothesay. At one point, the sources detail, Alesha woke up and asked him who he was.
And he lied to her.
He lied calmly, told her he knew her father and was taking her home. This just shows such a composed, manipulative nature, even in the middle of this horrific act. He carried her for about 15 minutes to a secluded, overgrown area on the grounds of a demolished hotel.
And it was there that he committed the full attack.
Yes. In that spot, he carried out the rape and murder. The post-mortem confirmed the cause of death was significant forceful pressure to her neck and face. Smothering. The sheer brutality is just evident.
After the murder, he immediately began covering his tracks.
He did. He threw his clothes, the jacket, joggers, boxers, everything into the sea. He then went home, had a shower, and then, showing just remarkable calculation, he went back to the murder site.
Why?
To get his phone. He'd accidentally dropped it. He was documented as being back at his own home by 3:35 a.m., having removed most of the immediate evidence from himself.
Which brings us to the devastating morning of July 2nd, the search, the discovery.
At 6 a.m., Alesha's grandfather, Killen MacPhail, got up for work and saw she was gone. The family knew immediately this was wrong. Her bike was still outside. They started searching frantically.
And her grandmother, Angela King, called the police at 6:23 a.m.
She did. And at the same time, she posted this urgent plea on Facebook, asking the local community for help.
And while this desperate search is going on, Campbell's response is just bone-chilling. Toni McLaughlin, remember, he'd called her, so she called him back.
At 9:01 a.m., yes. She asked him to keep an eye out for Alesha. And his reply, by text, was just horrific. He wrote, "Sorry doesn't matter," and he included 2 laughing emojis.
Laughing emoji.
And then followed it up with, "Oh, damn. I'm sure she's not went too far X."
Right.
This cruel, flippant detachment was one of the first things investigators saw when they looked at the digital records.
And tragically, the search didn't last long.
No. The police, with a local Coast Guard volunteer, had already found the kitchen knife near the MacPhail's home around 6:55 a.m. Then, at 8:54 a.m., a local man who had seen the grandmother's Facebook post, he found Alesha's body.
So, just over 2.5 hours after she was reported missing.
Exactly. He found her, lifeless and naked, hidden in that wooded area on the old hotel grounds.
The speed of it is just heartbreaking. And the sources note that her mother, Georgina Loughran, who was 70 miles away, actually found out through social media before the police could even get to her.
It's an awful detail. This shock just galvanized the community and Police Scotland. They poured resources onto the island, convinced the killer had to be a local, and the critical phase of the investigation began with the post-mortem on July 3rd.
The details from the pathologist are difficult, but they are absolutely necessary to establish the facts that led to the conviction.
The autopsy was conducted by Dr. John Williams. The findings were truly harrowing. Alesha had suffered an astonishing 117 separate injuries.
117.
Yes. Some were consistent with being moved through vegetation, but many others were clear signs of extreme violence, of being gripped forcefully. There was evidence of smothering her nose and mouth, and then there were what were described as catastrophic injuries to her genitalia, confirming the sexual assault.
The sheer number of injuries speaks to the prolonged and brutal nature of the attack.
It does, and it confirmed the cause of death as that significant forceful pressure to her neck and face.
So the police had the crime scene, they had the forensic details.
Yeah.
But what was the turning point? What led them specifically to Aaron Campbell?
The turning point came from the most unlikely source. His own mother, Jeanette Campbell. After the police put out a public appeal for information, she decided to check the CCTV camera installed outside her home.
And her motive for checking it?
Was to clear his name. According to the sources, she just wanted to confirm he wasn't involved, to remove any possible suspicion.
But the footage didn't clear him.
It did the exact opposite. It captured him leaving the house at 1:54 a.m. with the knife, and then it captured him returning at 3:35 a.m.
She must have confronted him.
She did, immediately, and he just insisted he knew nothing, that he was out buying cannabis. She believed him, but she still took the footage to the police on July 4th, thinking it would prove his story.
And that act, intended to exonerate him, led directly to his arrest.
Directly. He was brought in for questioning. He was initially cooperative, showing, quote, no signs of worry or intimidation. He stuck to his story. But based on the undeniable timestamps on that footage, he was arrested on suspicion of murder that same day.
And was charged the next day.
Yes, and after his arrest, he answered no comment to every question.
This just overwhelming body of evidence then brought everyone to the trial in February 2019, the High Court in Glasgow. And the prosecutor, Alesha MacPhail QC, built a case that was described as virtually airtight.
It was. The presiding judge, Lord Matthews, later called the evidence overwhelming. And the prosecution's entire strategy was built on things that couldn't be argued with. Forensic science, digital footprints, and physical evidence.
Okay, so let's break down that evidence in detail. Let's start with the CCTV and his movements.
Well, the CCTV from his mother's house gave them the bookends, leaving at 1:54 a.m., returning at 3:35 a.m., but police found other footage that filled in the gap.
From where?
Public cameras, witness cameras. They found footage of someone matching his description walking along the shoreline at 2:25 and 2:26 a.m. And the crucial detail was that this person appeared to be carrying something in their arms.
Consistent with carrying a small child.
Exactly, which supported the abduction theory.
And the physical evidence from Alesha's body corroborated that she was carried, right?
A key detail. The pathologist, John Williams, testified that Alesha's feet were completely clean and uninjured. This directly contradicts any idea that she walked across that rough shoreline. It proved she was lifted from her bed and carried the whole way.
The second major pillar of evidence was the items he threw into the sea.
Yes. His mother identified the recovered items, the jacket, the joggers, the knife, as his. That alone ties him to the cover-up. But the forensics went much deeper. Fiber analysis found fibers from his jogging bottoms on Alesha's discarded pajamas.
Showing direct contact.
Direct physical contact between his clothing and her clothing, likely inside the house.
But the most damning evidence, the thing that truly sealed the conviction, was the DNA.
The DNA was absolute. The forensic scientist, Stuart Bailey, testified that Campbell's DNA was on the clothes from the beach. But the real breakthrough was the samples from Alesha herself.
The sample from her neck.
Yes. The analysis showed that the statistical probability of that DNA belonging to anyone other than Aaron Campbell was 1 in a billion.
1 in a billion. You can't argue with that.
Lord Matthews called it overwhelming for a reason. And it wasn't just one sample.
Right.
His DNA was found on her face, on 14 separate parts of her body, and on her clothing. The sheer amount of his DNA on her left no room for any doubt whatsoever.
And then beyond the science, Campbell's own actions after the murder just screamed guilt. The digital footprint.
The cybercrime expert testified that on July 3rd, the day after the murder, Campbell used his phone to Google, "How do police find DNA?"
He was researching how he might get caught.
He was. He even visited a web page titled Collecting DNA Evidence. For the jury, this was undeniable proof that he knew he'd left evidence and was actively trying to understand his own undoing.
And finally, that Snapchat video. It shows such a brazen callousness.
A 16-year-old girl testified about it. Just hours after Alesha's body was found, Campbell sent a video of himself to a group of friends with the words written over it, "Found the guy who has done it."
It's just grotesque.
It's either a bizarre attempt to deflect suspicion or a profoundly cruel, morbid boast. Either way, it showed a complete lack of remorse.
So despite all of this, the DNA, the fibers, the CCTV, the Google search, he pleaded not guilty.
Yeah.
And he mounted a defense that was just built on lies.
His defense was that he was just out looking for his lost phone and cannabis. But his main legal tactic was something called a special defense of incrimination.
Which, in Scottish law, means you don't just say you didn't do it, you have to name who you think did.
Exactly. You formally accuse a specific third party, and the person he chose to incriminate was Toni McLaughlin, Alesha's father's girlfriend.
He took the witness stand and told this incredibly elaborate story.
A complete fabrication. He claimed he'd had consensual sex with McLaughlin that night. He then suggested that she had killed Alesha out of jealousy.
And that she had planted his DNA on the body to frame him.
Yes, using a condom, he claimed. His lawyer also tried to suggest McLaughlin's relationship with Alesha's father was abusive, to create this motive of a violent, jealous woman.
One of the most striking things from the trial coverage was his demeanor while he was saying all this.
Journalists were stunned. They described him as strikingly composed, unfazed, and articulate. He delivered these malicious, complex lies with this chilling calm. When asked directly if he did it, he said, "Absolutely not. I could never do that."
And he even agreed that blaming an innocent person would be evil.
The contrast between his calm exterior and the depravity of his lies was a defining feature of the trial.
But the prosecution completely dismantled this attempt to blame Toni McLaughlin.
Thoroughly. McLaughlin took the stand and denied everything. She testified she loved Alesha to pieces, and Alesha's grandmother backed her up, saying their relationship was great. This testimony, plus the forensic timeline, led the judge to call his claims a travesty of the truth and to state for the record that she was completely innocent.
And after that, the jury didn't need long.
Not long at all. After a 9-day trial, they deliberated for just 3 hours before returning a unanimous guilty verdict.
And Campbell's reaction?
Nothing. Remained entirely emotionless. Lord Matthews called the crimes some of the most wicked and evil the court had ever heard.
After the conviction, there was a really significant legal battle over whether his name could be released, since he was a minor.
That's right. Scottish law normally protects the identity of juvenile offenders. But media outlets immediately challenged the ban, arguing the unique, unprecedented nature of the crime meant the public had a right to know.
And Lord Matthews agreed. A historic decision.
A first in Scottish legal history for this kind of case. He lifted the naming restriction, citing the unique circumstances and the need for transparency. It was the court acknowledging that this was not a typical juvenile crime.
And then, before the sentencing, the psychological reports came out. And they revealed the true horror of his mindset.
Yes. These reports, from a forensic clinical psychologist named Dr. Gary McPherson, were crucial. After he was convicted, Campbell confessed everything to the doctor, in meticulous detail.
And the confession included some truly horrifying statements.
He said he was quite satisfied with the murder. And perhaps most disturbingly, he admitted that during the trial, especially when he was on the stand blaming the innocent Toni McLaughlin, it took everything to stop laughing.
That just recontextualizes that composed demeanor entirely.
It confirms the deep-seated psychopathic nature of the crime. And the report warned of continued danger. It explicitly said he continued to experience thoughts of killing and having sex with children and having sex with dead bodies.
Which made it impossible for the judge to see him as someone who could be rehabilitated.
Impossible.
So on March 21st, 2019, Lord Matthews delivered the sentence.
And he described Campbell as a cold, calculating, remorseless, and dangerous individual, completely lacking in victim empathy. He handed down a life sentence with a minimum term of 27 years.
And he added that rehabilitation seemed like a remote possibility, maybe even impossible.
He did. The public reaction was, of course, immense. Alesha's mother said a life sentence should mean life, that he was inhuman. Many felt 27 years was not nearly enough.
And that minimum term was later challenged by Campbell himself.
It was. He successfully appealed the length of the term. In September 2019, 3 judges ruled that 27 years was excessive for a 16-year-old under the existing guidelines.
So it was reduced.
by 3 years down to 24 years. This means he'll be eligible to apply for parole in 2042 when he's 40 years old. But, and this is critical, the judges stressed that he may never actually be released.
Let's shift now to the broader impact. The societal reaction, the debates that this tragedy sparked.
The public outrage was just massive. The case was constantly compared to the 1993 murder of James Bulger because of the victim's age and the perpetrator's youth. The shock, as we said, was rooted in Butte being this safe place. The illusion was shattered.
And the trial also revealed a different side of Butte, a reality beyond the tourist postcards.
It really did. The sources highlight this. The investigation pulled back the curtain on a community dealing with a declining population, economic deprivation, and issues with teenage drinking and drug use. The crime didn't happen in a perfect paradise. It happened in a real community with real challenges.
Campbell's age, 16, also prompted this huge national debate about youth violence and what causes it.
Everyone was trying to find a reason for something that seemed inexplicable. There was intense focus on his obsession with violent digital content, like the Slender Man meme, and speculation about drug-induced psychosis. It reflected the societal need to find an external cause for such internal wickedness.
And it led to a very controversial suggestion about psychological screening for children.
Yes, the psychologist who assessed Campbell argued that maybe young children should be screened for psychopathic traits so that aggressive therapeutic intervention could begin before these destructive tendencies manifest. A very controversial idea, but it shows how seriously this conversation was being taken.
We also need to address the misinformation that spread in the early days before Campbell was identified.
It's a sad common feature of these cases. Before he was identified as a local boy, false rumors started online, pushed by some right-wing commentators claiming the killer was a Syrian refugee.
A claim that was completely baseless.
And politically motivated. Politicians condemned it immediately as a divisive, hate-filled lie. It just showed how a tragedy can be maliciously exploited to fuel hate.
But amidst all that darkness, the community did rally powerfully around Alesha's memory.
They really did. There was a candlelit vigil that drew hundreds, and they created lasting memorials. There's a pink memorial bench on the Rothesay Promenade, a place for reflection.
And her primary school raised money for a playhouse in her memory.
Over £22,000 in public donations. It was the community's effort to hold on to the innocence that was so cruelly stolen.
As we draw this deep dive to a close, what can we really synthesize about the lasting impact of this case?
I mean, the impact is multi-layered. Legally, it set a new precedent in Scotland for naming juvenile offenders in extreme cases. Psychologically, it forced a confrontation with the reality of profound, remorseless evil originating in a youth. And for the community on Bute, it permanently changed their sense of safety and exposed vulnerabilities they had to address. The facts, at the end of the day, confirmed a cold, calculated crime revealed by overwhelming forensic precision.
That precision and the chilling evidence of the perpetrator's own satisfaction really confirmed the devastating reality. We want to leave you with a final thought, prompted by a comment from Fiona Dyer of the University of Strathclyde after the conviction. She said the nation should use this as an opportunity to understand how someone gets to that point and what can be done when a child is vulnerable to acting in this way. So this raises the essential question for you. Given the extensive evidence of Aaron Campbell's long history of violent thoughts, depression, and destructive behavior, how early should society be compelled to intervene in the lives of vulnerable youth who are displaying such dangerous tendencies?